Hello everybody, Swanner Rich here. With 365 days equals 3 genres. This is actually a contest entry into a CJC Vinyl Guy, his channel. And I think the contest is going till March 10th, if I remember right. You have like over a month to enter. And I thought I would do it, It showed 3 genres, showed 3 albums of one, 6 of another, and 5 of another. He's celebrating 1 year in the VC, and I think that's a good thing to do. I would rather celebrate milestones of how long you've been in, and then instead of a push to 400 or any of that nonsense. Anyway, the first genre I'm going to show is a psychedelic. And this is the Glass Family Electric Band. I bought this album. Bomp was having a sale. And I picked this album up for, I believe it was 10. It may have been $12. And I got the 2 LP version. And fantastic. I thought I'll take a chance on it, The first album is the album that they released. The second LP is what they first released and presented to the record company, and the record company said, no, go back into the studio. And I must admit, this time the record company got it right. The one that they released is better than the second LP. Now this album, it has like hard rock and psych, like I Want to See My Baby. It's got poppy psych songs like Passage 17, I believe. It's also got kind of bluesy tinged psych. I think Born in the USA and maybe Lady Blue. But yeah, this is a really good psych album. I would say it's better than Odyssey and Oracle. Yeah, I said it. In my opinion, it's a better psych album. Now the second album, and the last song, Agorn, it starts out with a drum solo, a very short drum solo, and it builds into this tribal jam. It's really good, man. It's a really great way to end the album. And the opening track, House of Glass, is just a fantastic psych album. And in fact, that's the only song that they re-recorded, for this one. It's the closing track on that second LP. And it's probably the best song on this, on that second LP, the Rejected record. But yeah, man, if you can get this, pick it up. It's really worth it. Now, talk about great psych albums. This is definitely in my top 20 all-time psych albums. UK Psych Band. It checks all the psychedelic boxes. It has trippy sounds. It's got echo. It's got sitar. It's got songs with fade outs. It's just a fantastic album. And if you're not familiar with it, I would suggest check it out, dude. Because it's one of the best psychedelic albums, in my opinion. What I consider psychedelic. And the third one I'm going to show is Danny Ben Israel. This is the Kathmandu sessions. Now this was recorded during the Bullshit sessions, or I can't remember the name of his album, but it said it was something bullshit, And that record is considered the first Hebrew psychedelic record or album ever released. This album essentially is like a jam. It basically, that's what it is. It's like long jams. The last song on side 2, Do You Believe in Fairy Tales, is kind of like Donovan singing over a free form music. But the one that's really cool is The Hippies of Today Are the Assholes of Tomorrow. And it's almost like it's a spoken word thing. But man, it's pretty, hits the nail on the head, The people that are cool or think they know what's best or whatever end up becoming the establishment of tomorrow, I mean, the hippies turned into the just say no generation, you know? So that's my 3 sight. Now I'm going to show 6 blues albums. Now this album essentially was my introduction to the blues. I think the first blues, you know, legitimately blues album or song that I heard was The Thrill Is Gone. They played that song on the radio a lot. And I loved it, man. It's kind of funny, but I used to, you know, listen to my transistor radio and do my homework. And I remember calling into the station and requesting that song. And I think it's the only time I've ever requested a song on a radio station. But yeah, I don't know, it was something about it. It was something different. And it was a big hit for B.B. King. Now, when I bought the album, I was kind of disappointed with some of the songs. I mean, the way it starts was so excited. I go, oh, fuck, this is going to be great. But no, there were some slower numbers. And what's funny is that the songs that I did like the most back then are still the ones that I like today, you know? Now, this next album is one of my favorite blues albums of all time. It's the legendary Son House, father of the folk blues. It's essentially a metal acoustic guitar, you know? I don't know what it's called. I'm not a musician. Blind Al Wilson from Canned Heat ran across this guy or found him or whatever. I think he was living in New York City. He had retired from the music industry. He had become religious and he just left that life behind him. Alan Wilson convinced him into going into the studio, and man, I'm so glad he did. It's a fantastic album. Blind Al Wilson plays harmonica on a couple of the songs, and it's just a fantastic, the F word again, it's a fantastic album, dude. One of my favorite all-time blues albums. Now, one of my favorite guys, blues players, is Fred McDowell. And this is Mississippi Fred McDowell. I Do Not Play No Rock and Roll. Just a fantastic album from the 60s. Not sure exactly when, and it doesn't matter. But I like the way his phrasing on this album. Like the first song, Baby Please Don't Go. The famous Joe Williams song. A baby please. A baby please. A baby please don't. A baby, please don't go. I mean, it takes him like 4 tries before he gets the whole sentence out. And he does the same thing with the next song, Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. Just so unique. This guy's from northern Mississippi, the Mississippi Hill Country. And very influential guitar player. Robert Johnson, you know, the myth is, oh, he went to the crossroads and he met the devil, signed a pact with the devil, and that's how he learned how to play the guitar so good. That's not actually what happened. He went up into the Mississippi Hill, northern Mississippi Hill Country, and he started hanging around this guy. And this guy, you know, taught him some stuff. True story. Now this next album, man, another one from the 60s, Hoodoo Man Blues, Junior Wells Chicago Blues Band. This has such a unique just groove and sound. The guitar sound of Buddy Guy on this is just so, it's like nothing other at this time. Kind of distorted. And the story goes, he blew out his amplifier, you know, in the studio. So he plugged his guitar into this organ amp or something. And that's how he got the sound that he did on this. And man, it's so good that he did, dude. It's just a great, one of the best blues albums around. Now talk about a unique guy, Taj Mahal. This first song, Leaving Trunk, man, the guitars on that, man. As soon as I heard it, I was hooked, dude. Now I do prefer his early albums over some of his later stuff. Or maybe that was just because my tastes were changed at the same time those albums came out. I don't know. It's been years since I've heard any of those other than his first two albums, you know. But yeah, this is a great album. He was part of that U.S. Hippies discovering the blues. And very cool, man. Easy Rider's another good song on here. Statusboro Blues, he does that. But man, the way this album starts with Leaving Trunk is just... And the last blues album is Too Bad Jim by R.L. Burnside. This was recorded in 1993. This dude, I think his earliest recordings were in the late 60s, early 70s, and those were like acoustic. This has him on electric guitar. Kenny Brown, I believe. Yeah, Kenny Brown on electric guitar, and Calvin Burnside on drums. Now, what's unique about that particular lineup is Calvin, his nephew, is in his 20s. Kenny, the other guitar player, is in his 40s, and RL's in his 60s. You know, that's a pretty unique lineup. But yeah, it's Mississippi Hill music. It isn't Delta blues at all, Mississippi Delta blues. This gets more into a groove and just keeps on pounding, you know. Shake 'em on down. Just one of his fantastic songs. And yeah, I love R.L. Burnside. And this is a really good one. Now, 365. So I'm going to show 5 of my next genre, and it's going to be jazz. You know, I decided to show jazz, and this album in particular, because of the VC Ambassador. I don't know if he just picked this album up or recently purchased it, or he showed it for one reason or another. And I pulled it, and I pulled some of my other jazz that I haven't listened to in a couple of decades, maybe. This is Gary Bartz. He played soprano saxophone with Miles Davis. The playing on this is pretty free. It's not free jazz, though. There is a structure to the, you know, the beat, the rhythm section. And I mean, in fact, the first song on side 2, Doctor Follows Dance, it's almost like a Herbie Hancock song from that era. But yeah, really good album. Gary Bartz, Follow the Medicine Man. Now this next one is the dude from Weather Report. It's how I always refer to him because I'm not good at pronouncing names like that. Zawinul? I don't know. I think he's from Austria. Keyboard player, also played with Miles Davis. And this sounds like an early Weather Report album, actually. He even does In a Silent Way on here. Very good. The next one is Kenny Gill. This is a little known album. It's on Warner Brothers Records. And all these jazz records are not on Blue Note. Blue Note has some great records, but not everything on Blue Note is great. As some people seem to think nowadays, a lot of it gets repetitious, and there's a lot of great jazz that are on other labels other than Blue Note. And these 5 are all good examples of that. This came out in 71, I believe. Yeah, 71. That's my sweet spot for jazz, late 60s, early 70s. This also has some free playing, has 2 tenor saxophones on it, and Kenny on piano, and it's a really spectacular album. And I don't know how hard it is to find. I got this obviously in the dollar bins, and back then, that's why I got into jazz. I was getting tired, like by 72 or so. I was kind of tired of some of the direction some of the rock and roll was going. A lot of bands were taking themselves too serious, so I started exploring jazz. And what's ironic about that is I kind of left jazz because I felt they were taking their self too serious. So, you know, I don't know. And Punk came along and just gave me a kick in the ass. But anyways, this is a really good album, dude. If you can find it. I don't think it's an expensive album, but I don't think it's a real common one. Now the next one is Jack D. This is how I used to say his name. Jack DeJohnette. I guess it's Jack DeJohnette. And this is Sorcery. Another guy. Played with Miles Davis. He's a drummer. This guy has been on a lot of great jazz albums. I don't necessarily, I never really considered him a great jazz drummer. Not like Tony Williams. He plays more just straightforward beats, you know. He's not like all that. It's kind of like Buddy Miles with Jimi Hendrix. He just played the beats louder than heck. But Mitch Mitchell, man, he just floated across all the drums, you know. But saying that, this is a fantastic album, dude. And Jack DeJohnette, or Jack DeJohnette, he really impresses me on this. Now you got Bernie Maupin, bass clarinet, fantastic guy from Herbie Hancock. You got Dave Holland, a fantastic bass player. It's really got some great players on it. But what's interesting is on side 2, it's basically Jack on keyboard and drums, Dave Holland on bass, and then you got this other guy playing a little bit of trombone, but it's just like... Jack DeJohnette is pretty good on the piano and stuff on this, man. It's very good album. And the last album I'm going to show is John McLaughlin's first album. It didn't come out in the US until, I think it was recorded in '69, but it wasn't released in the US until 1972. And that's because of the success of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. This has some acoustic guitars. You can see he's playing acoustic there, and electric. It's pretty straightforward, but it's very well done. It doesn't get into that cheesy elevator music jazz. It's a little more beyond that. And it's basically a quartet. It's got a dude on John Sermon on baritone and soprano sax, John McLaughlin on guitar, Brian Oakes on bass, and Tony Oxley on drums. Basically a quartet, but very, very well done. I would love to get his second album, Devotion. I heard that one's a pretty heavy album. Anyways, that's my 365 days equals a year equals 3 genres. Check out CGC. I think that's right. The vinyl guy. Take care, everybody. Go Dodgers.